The administrator's name was something I couldn't pronounce without my jaw doing things it wasn't designed for, so I'd been privately calling him Gerald. Gerald had 4 arms, a crest of pale sensory filaments along his collar, and the particular posture of a bureaucrat who has already decided how a meeting is going to go. He was wrong about how that meeting was going to go, but I didn't know that yet either, so we were even. "The survey contract," Gerald said, sliding the tablet across the desk with 2 of his 4 hands, and using the other 2 to gesture at something behind me. I didn't turn around, but I heard the low clicking that I would later identify as Velhari laughter. "You understand the parameters. Veth Canopy Preserve, Northern Sector, 14 square kilometers of primary forest, 7 days to complete your grid, file your environmental indexes, and return here." "Understood," I said. "You will be alone in the forest." "That's what the contract says." Another round of clicking from behind me. Gerald's crest lifted slightly, the Velhari equivalent of a raised eyebrow, I'd learn, and he said, with the careful neutrality of someone who has already won a bet and is waiting for the payout, "Humans traditionally find the preserve challenging." I pulled the tablet toward me and started reading the fine print. "I'm sure it'll be fine," I said. I signed the contract. I shouldered my pack. I walked into the canopy. Day 1. I found the first position at 0840. It was in the upper fork of a Veth broadleaf, 11 meters off the ground, southeast quadrant. The canopy breaks there, in a way that puts a surveyor walking the grid in direct sightline for about 40 steps. Clean angles, good concealment on the approach. Whoever had chosen the spot knew what they were doing. I logged it, cross-referenced the coordinates, noted the approximate mass displacement in the branch, large, maybe 90 kilos, based on how the secondary limbs were flexed, and moved on. I had 8 more grid squares to cover before lunch, and the light was already burning off the morning mist. By mid-afternoon, I'd logged 3 more positions, 2 in the undergrowth along the creek bed, 1 in a collapsed section of root system that had been modified, carefully, and recently, into something that functioned like a blind. I photographed the root modification and filed it under possible non-human structure, origin uncertain, further investigation recommended. That night, something circled my camp for about 2 hours. It moved in a wide arc, staying just outside the firelight. I could hear it shifting its weight in the leaf litter. It was very good, almost silent, but almost is doing real work in that sentence. I logged the circling pattern, estimated the circuit timing, noted it as a single animal, and went to sleep. I had an early start. Day 3 is when they apparently decided to escalate. I was working the northern sector's ridgeline when the temperature dropped about 4 degrees in under a minute. That's not a weather event. I pulled out my thermal reader and caught the edges of 2 heat signatures, flanking my position at roughly 30 meters on each side. Moving in sync, they were hurting. I took the readings, filed them, and sat down on a log to eat my lunch. One of the heat signatures stopped moving, then the other one did. I ate my sandwich. We sat there for about 12 minutes. Then they moved off, separately, back into the deeper canopy. I finished my lunch and kept working. That evening I updated my appendix. I had 11 confirmed positions now, mapped to GPS coordinates, cross-referenced with the time of day patterns that were starting to become clear. They preferred the hours around dawn and the 2 hours after sunset. They favored elevated positions for observation and ground-level positions for approach. They were disciplined, and they were patient, and they communicated in subsonic pulses that my recorder picked up as a low hum in the 18 Hz range. I noted all of this. It was good data. I was having a fine time. Night 5 was impressive, I'll give them that. I'd set up my tent in a small clearing on the eastern slope, which in retrospect was probably exactly where they wanted me. Around 2300, I woke to the sound of the forest going quiet. That particular absence of noise that means every small animal in the area has made a decision. I unzipped the tent, sat at the entrance with my recorder, and watched. They came out of the tree line from 4 directions simultaneously. I counted 7 of them before the clouds shifted and cut the moonlight. They were extraordinary to look at. The Velhari ambush forms are different from the administrative ones, lower to the ground, the camouflage chromatophores cycling through the local undergrowth palette in real time. In the dark, with the chromatophores active, they were nearly invisible. Nearly. I took recordings. I noted the spacing of the encirclement, the approach vectors, the subsonic pulse pattern they were using to coordinate. I estimated their positions based on the displacement of the knee-high ground cover they were moving through, and mapped 7 of them with what I later calculated was about a 3-meter margin of error. Then I said, in a conversational tone, "I can see you." The forest went even quieter. That's hard to do when it's already quiet, but they managed it. "I'm going back to sleep," I said, "early start." I zipped up the tent. I went back to sleep. I have no idea how long they stood there after that, because I was asleep. I walked out of the preserve on day 7, at 13:40, which was 40 minutes ahead of the window I'd quoted in the contract. Gerald was at the perimeter station. He had 3 of his colleagues with him, and all 4 of them had their crests at full extension, which I'd learned by that point meant they were in a state of some heightened attention. I handed him the data package. "Survey complete," I said. "Environmental indexes are in sections 1 through 4. Soil profiles, canopy density maps, creek hydrology, the usual. Secondary growth indicators are a little surprising. There's evidence of significant subsurface root network modification in the eastern quadrant that you might want to flag for your own records." Gerald was looking at the tablet. He'd gotten to the appendix. "The position data is in Appendix C," I said. 41 confirmed observation points, mapped by GPS coordinate and time of day. I've also got the subsonic communication frequency range, if that's useful. 14 to 22 Hz. The peaks cluster around 18. The chromatophore cycling rate during active camouflage runs roughly 1 pallet shift per 2.3 seconds in low light, a bit faster in the direct dawn window. That's all in Appendix D. Gerald's crest had gone flat. Completely flat. His colleagues' crests had gone flat too. One of them made a sound I didn't recognize. "The encirclement pattern from Night 5 is probably your most tactically interesting data point," I said, "if you're doing any kind of behavioral ecology work. 7-point simultaneous approach, very clean coordination. I got good recordings of the subsonic pulse sequencing. Feel free to use any of it." Gerald looked up from the tablet. He looked at me for a long moment. "You," he said, "were not afraid." I thought about that. "The route modification in the eastern quadrant was more interesting, honestly," I said. "Somebody's been working on that for years. The structural integration is really quite good." His crest stayed flat. Behind him, one of his colleagues had taken a step backward. "When would you like me to start the secondary survey?" I said. "I can do the southern sector in 5 days if the grid squares are similar in density. 6 if the creek systems are more complex." Gerald looked down at the tablet again. He looked at Appendix C. He looked at Appendix D. He looked at the 41 GPS coordinates arranged in a neat table with timestamps and behavioral notes and a column I'd labeled Estimated Body Mass. He didn't say anything for a while. "Monday," he said finally. "Monday works," I said. "I'll need resupply on the nutritional bars. I was a little short by day 6. Everything else I can bring from my kit." I signed the completion form, took my copy, and walked back to my vehicle. Behind me, I could hear the low clicking that I'd learned by then was Velhari laughter, but it had a different quality to it than the laughter in Gerald's office on day 1. I filed my report that evening, ate a real dinner for the first time in a week, and made a note to bring an extra case of nutritional bars for Monday. The forest was still out there. 41 confirmed positions, give or take 3 meters. Gerald had the data now. Whatever he did with it was his business. It had been a good survey.